Hi, Junction Cardinals. It's Miss Stauffer here, and I'm going to be reading Chapter 12 in Life According to Og the Frog, so go ahead and get your books out and follow along with me. Chapter 12, Tanks a Lot. Floating, just floating, on a relaxing spring afternoon. My belly is full, the water is just right, and the peepers are singing their spring song. But what's that shadow ahead? I take a giant leap, and Sneaky Chopper misses me, barely. So much for a relaxing day, but that's life in the swamp. Luckily, life is more relaxing at my teacher's house this weekend. My first night there is pleasant enough. I get a juicy cricket treat, thanks Mr. Brisbane, but there's nothing else I'd call special. What was Mrs. Brisbane talking about? The next morning, the Brisbanes both go out to the car and leave me alone. I'm trying to imagine all the fun my friends are having at Richie's birthday party. So I decided to take my mind off what I'm missing. I launch into my weekend workout, jumping jacks, push-ups, and giant leaps, followed by energetic splashing. I want to see if I can hit the lid again, and once I succeed. After a while, the Brisbanes return with armloads of bags and smiles on their faces. Og, we've got another treat for you, Mr. Brisbane announces. Thanks to Petorama. Petorama must be quite a place. It's where my tasty tidbits come from. Even Humphrey came from there, and I am a teensy bit jealous. Mr. Brisbane wasn't kidding about a treat for me. He spends most of the day fixing up my tank. When he's finished, the place looks pretty spiffy. Now the dinky dish of water has been replaced and half my tank is a lovely swimming pool. I'll be able to dive and swim. Bing, bang, boing! I'd love to make a splash. And he's added some more leafy green plants. It's not exactly like the swamp, but it feels more like home. Mr. Brisbane tops off this perfect day by feeding me another tasty cricket treat. While Mrs. Brisbane is out of the room, of course. You don't have to mention this stuff to my wife, he tells me. Believe me, I won't. That night, when the house is quiet, I make up a new version of the hoppy frog song. I sing a hoppy frog song, I sing my song out loud. I have a brand new home now, and I'm feeling proud. It's fun to dive and swim around. I love my new plants too. And my friends, the Brisbanes, I really do thank you. And when I'm feeling a little tired and ready to doze off, I think that Mr. and Mrs. Brisbane wouldn't go to so much trouble if they were really planning to send me to Piney Woods, would they? I'm pretty excited about returning to room 26 on Monday. I hope that my neighbor, Humphrey, will notice the changes in my tank. He doesn't, at first. And neither do any of the other big tads. They're too busy chattering away about the party like a crowd of cackling crows. From what I hear, somehow Humphrey ended up being pulled out of a magician's hat. I wish I could ask the little guy how that happened. I notice other things too, like the fact that Heidi and Gail are best friends again. From the way they act, it's hard to believe they ever called each other names or stuck their tongues out at each other. Thanks for sticking up for me, Heidi says. I couldn't let that bully treat you that way, Gail answers. After all, you're my friend. I don't know who that bully was. Could it have been George? I guess Granny Greenleaf was right about problems having a way of working themselves out. Heidi and Gail are truly gold friends. The fact that they've made up is more magical than pulling a hamster out of a hat. Then, my neighbor notices the changes in my tank and lets out a series of excited squeaks. The big tads notice too. Whoa, Augie the Frog, that's some snazzy swimming pool you've got there, AJ says as he leans down to inspect my tank. The other students gather around. Now he can dive and swim, Saya says softly. He could be in the Olympics. Or the Frog Olympics, Kirk adds. And his tank seems a lot more swampy than with all those new plants, Miranda says. I think he needs some furniture, Richie suggests, like a bed and a couch. Gail giggles. And a TV. How about a fireplace, AJ hollers. The bed and TV sound nice. The fireplace? No thank you. Later, when the students leave room 26 for home, Humphrey doesn't waste any time flinging open the door to his cage and scampering over to take a closer peek at my tank. Watch this! I stand on my tippy toes and on my rock, and then leap into the swimming area with a giant, splashy dive. It's a dive any frog would be proud of. But is Humphrey impressed? No way. The little guy panics and rushes back to his cage. Oops, I forgot that hamsters shouldn't get wet. I'll try not to splash him in the future. I don't want to upset him. When Aldo comes in to clean, he has 2 surprises for me. One is a treat, a mealworm. Thanks, Aldo. He also notices my new and improved tank right away and thinks it's awesome. A frog like you deserves a swimming pool, he says. Now you can dive and leap as much as you want. Boing, boing, I agree. The second surprise is that he tells me he has applied to college and was accepted. That's what the piece of paper was all about, and he turned it in. Humphrey here found out at the party. But I wanted you to know too, Og, he says. Way to go, I tell him, bouncing up and down on my rock. It's a hoppy celebration, something like a hatch day. I feel very contented for most of the week. I'm almost glad there are no more surprises. I can just think, float, doze, be. But on Thursday afternoon, suddenly Heidi shouts, Look, out the window, look! I hop up and down on my rock so I can get a good view. Curtains of fluffy white flakes are falling from the sky, and the ground is already getting white as well. It's snowing, some of the students shout. I've seen a few white puffs fall from the sky before, but nothing like this. When it's cold enough for the white stuff, it's time for me to take a long, long nap. Boy, I've never seen it snow so hard in my whole life, Richie says. Neither have I. I've never appreciated the quiet beauty of snow piling up. In the past, I've slept right through it. My poor friends back in the swamp are probably sound asleep right now, missing this sight. There is something to be said for a classroom pet. Regular meals, no enemies, and now, snow. Mrs. Brisbane helps her students get bundled up at the end of the day. See you tomorrow, she tells us when she hurries out the door. That's what she always says, at least during the week. The little guy next door just sits in his cage, staring out at the curtains of snow filling the empty parking lot. He looks and looks, but Aldo's car never arrives. Aldo never misses an evening of work. Maybe he's hibernating. Outside, the whole world is white. Who knew this could happen? There's nothing out there except snow. And more snow. Very, very cold snow. All that cold snow makes me feel very, very sleepy. It snows a lot more all night and the next day. No one shows up for class. Not even Mrs. Brisbane. My little neighbor must have realized that nobody is coming to school because he flings open the door of his cage and he stares out the window for a long, long time. I sleep quite a bit, but when the bell rings for recess or lunch, I wake up with no big tads making noise. I quickly drop back to sleep. In the afternoon, I sleep more deeply, dreaming of the time that Jumping Jack and I played a game of leapfrog, hopping over each other, and Jack landed nose to nose with the hungry-looking raccoon. I've never seen a frog leap backwards so far and so fast. Scritch, scritch, scritch! No animal in the swamp goes scritch. I'm awake now, and the sound is Humphrey writing in his notebook. It's not a bad sound. I nod off again. It's as chilly as water moccasin's heart. I'm aware of some sounds, the last bell of the day, Humphrey spinning on his wheel, but mostly I doze. Sometime during the night, a loud machine goes back and forth outside. A whirling orange light streams through the window. The other sound I hear all night is Humphrey squeaking outside my tank. I wake up just enough to say goodnight. Humphrey gives up and goes back to his cage. Room 26 is quieter than a water snake silently slithering through the dark water.